Marvel's cinematic universe is officially dead. At least to me. I've been a Marvel fan since I was like 6 years old. I grew up on Raimi's Spider-Man, X-Men, Blade, all those early superhero films that basically shaped a generation. I was that kid who knew every character, read about every hero, and genuinely believed that one day a radioactive spider would bite me and I'd become Spider-Man. It didn't happen. And for me, the moment it truly died was after Avengers Endgame, because everything that came after just didn't feel the same. Marvel stopped being a universe of heroes and became a content factory. But some of you might say, no, it's not true. Marvel is as good as it ever was. They're still making good movies. They're exploring TV shows, cartoons, animated series. They still have plans for every year. And yeah, I agree, we did see good stuff from Marvel, but definitely not a lot of it. And what we call good stuff wasn't as good as everything that came before the Endgame. The reason for this is pretty simple, and it's called the interconnection. After the Endgame, a lot of fans continued to watch new content from Marvel, because it was interesting how would the MCU evolve after they kinda finished the main story, so everyone was excited about new upcoming projects. That's when Marvel started believing they'd already reached their peak. They thought their audience was locked in, that no matter what they made, people would still show up to the movie theater. And that was just the beginning of the downfall. Then came another major problem. Marvel still didn't have full rights to some of their biggest superheroes. And I'm not even mentioning the fact that they fired James Gunn, who's like the best screenwriter and director there is. It was a huge blow to Marvel's reputation. But James Gunn received a lot of support from the public and his friends that he worked with. After Endgame, Marvel had every opportunity to do something fresh, to take the existing story and build something meaningful from that. But instead, they decided to just pick up where they left off. And that would have been fine, if only they did it right. They started off decently. Loki, WandaVision, both interesting ideas, but then it felt like they had no clue where to go next. The more they expanded the timeline, the harder it became for new viewers. Because to understand what's going on, you suddenly had to watch 15 years of content. Movies, series, spin-offs, post-credit scenes, crossovers, everything. And that's where Marvel started losing people. Not because their fans stopped loving superheroes, but because keeping up with the universe became a full-time job. And honestly, I'm one of those people. I just don't want to sit through hours of mediocre content that exists only to fill a timeline. It's not even about the amount, it's about quality. They for some reason decided to revive Iron Man in the worst way possible and show us a very cringe version of Hulk. And now every new film feels like a checklist instead of a story. So what could Marvel have done differently? Well, the truth is, they did know what they were doing. They had years of content planned ahead. Every movie, TV show mapped out. And that's the problem. Having planned every new project was a pretty bad decision, because you can never know if they're gonna be successful or not. You can't plan creativity like it's a spreadsheet. You can't schedule passion 5 years in advance. I mean, an actor could quit or even die. The tone can shift. Audiences can lose interest, but Marvel kept following the plan blindly. What they should have done is focus on the characters that people already cared about. As James Gunn himself once said about the new DC universe, it's about focusing on the big heroes first, because that's who the audience truly connects with. Introducing too many new characters at once and tying them all into one giant multiverse doesn't make the story deeper. It makes it harder to enjoy. What I'm trying to say is that stories should be either easy to follow, or following them should be worthwhile. In Marvel's case, they failed at both. People shouldn't have to study a franchise to understand what's happening on screen. And yes, that would have meant fewer releases, more breaks between movies, but that's fine. I'd rather wait a few years for something genuinely exciting than watch another company turn art into a production line. In the end, we got an endless stream of confusing, politically charged, soulless projects. It's unclear who these movies were even for anymore, but one thing's certain, it wasn't about the love of storytelling. So while Marvel was busy self-destructing, DC quietly pulled off the biggest comeback in comic book history. Yes, DC is back, and we should all thank one man for that, James Gunn. He was fired from Marvel Studios back in July 2018 because of some old controversial tweets. But just a few months later, in October of the same year, Warner Brothers hired him to write and direct a reboot of the failed Suicide Squad from 2016. Gunn's version, The Suicide Squad, was released in 2021. He was given full creative freedom, since the movie wasn't connected to the old one. And it paid off. Critics and fans loved it way more than the 2016 version. After the success of the Suicide Squad, James Gunn started working on Peacemaker, starring John Cena, who had previously appeared in the Suicide Squad 2021, but was killed off at the end. John Cena's performance moved James Gunn so much that he changed the ending of the film, adding a post-credit scene in which the character Peacemaker remains alive. This goes against his main rule of never ever bringing dead characters back to life. But in the case of John Cena, Gunn did not lose out. In early 2022, the first season of Peacemaker dropped on HBO Max, and it was a massive hit, receiving incredibly good reviews. Peacemaker became one of the public's favorite characters in the DC universe. This success convinced Warner Brothers that Gunn could lead a whole franchise. Later, he was offered the chance to run DC Studios, which would replace DC Films. According to James Gunn, the position was offered only to him, but he wanted to have his good friend and longtime manager Peter Safran by his side. In November 2022, James Gunn and Peter Safran became CEOs and co-chairmen of the newly founded DC Studios. Alright, enough history. Let's talk about the absolute bangers these guys are cooking up. Let's go in order of release, starting with the Suicide Squad 2021. This movie is kind of a mix between canon and non-canon. Some actors from that movie ended up playing completely different characters later in the newly formed DC universe, which now has a single unified timeline, so it's basically half connected, half standalone. The events of the Suicide Squad are considered canon and are referenced in later projects. It also serves as the starting point for one of the best DC shows ever made, Peacemaker. Peacemaker is a show with a completely different vibe compared to anything Marvel has ever done. It's something fresh, something new that James Gunn brought into the DCU. More importantly, it's exactly what many viewers wanted to see, a show that you could even recommend to people who hate everything related to superheroes. James Gunn has a very distinct style that he adapts depending on the project. He's got an incredible sense of dark humor, a great taste in music. He also has his own filming style. In his works, we often see fight scenes set to cool music, and Peacemaker is basically a mix of everything James Gunn does best, without being limited by genre, setting, or age restrictions. The characters and events in Peacemaker tackle some really serious themes. There's a lot of killing, blood, violence, and swearing, but at the same time, the show still feels bright and entertaining. Unlike a similar series like The Boys, which often feels overly realistic and gritty, Peacemaker is simple to understand and doesn't force the viewer to overthink or stress too much about the characters, even though none of them have superpowers. The show just has its own set of rules, and they work perfectly. That's what makes it so interesting. Of course, as good as it all sounds, unfortunately, the newly formed DCU still has projects with their own tone and restrictions, whether that's in terms of age rating or narrative. As James Gunn previously said, characters like Superman and Peacemaker are unlikely to cross paths, but considering how the second season of Peacemaker ended, I think we still have a chance. But what we will definitely see is how the entire cinematic universe evolves from different points in the main timeline, and how the events of each project affect one another. That series directly continues the story from the Suicide Squad, exploring what happens next with John Cena's character. The events of the Suicide Squad also get mentioned in James Gunn's next project, an animated series, Creature Commandos. After everything that happened in the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, Season 1 probably, Amanda Waller is basically banned from using human prisoners for her secret missions. So she comes up with a workaround. If she can't use humans, she'll use monsters. You should definitely check this series out if you want to really dive into James Gunn's newly formed DC universe. Because we get introduced to some really cool characters that could appear in live adaptations, like G.I. Robot, who's basically a killing machine. He was built during World War II and programmed to only kill Nazis. I mean, that already sounds pretty cool, right?
G.I. Robot would like to kill Nazis with you. Would you like to kill Nazis with G.I. Robot? G.I. Robot has been waiting for a friend to kill Nazis with for 74 years, 23 days, and 52 minutes.
The biggest banger of the year. The movie the whole world was waiting for. It tells the classic story of Superman, played by David Corenswet, who fits the role perfectly. You can really tell he cares about the character and about what Superman stands for. This isn't the dark, gloomy DC world we've seen before. James Gunn understood exactly what fans wanted to see. A Superman who represents courage, kindness, and hope. Someone who'll always try to do the right thing. What I personally like the most about this portrayal of the Superman is that he's not nerfed at all. Gunn showed us the comics version of the Superman, who's really the strongest superhero in DC Universe. Even though he gets his butt kicked, he comes back and proves how strong he really is. Gunn also reminded us that while Superman may be an alien, he's still one of the most human characters in the entire DC universe. Okay, let me make things a little easier for those who want to dive into the new DC universe. Here's the right order to watch all of James Gunn's projects that have been released so far, which are considered canon in the new DCU. First, watch the Suicide Squad 2021. It sets the foundation for everything that comes next. Then, head straight to Peacemaker Season 1, a direct continuation of Peacemaker's story. After that, we move into Superman, released this summer, the first official step in the new DCU timeline. Next up comes Creature Commandos, and finally Peacemaker Season 2, which builds on everything that came before, pushing the story even further and setting up the next movie, Man of Tomorrow, which is supposed to come out in 2027. Watching things in that order gives you the fastest way to understand what's happening in this timeline. But if you, for example, don't want to watch everything here, then you can skip Creature Commandos and the Suicide Squad. Even though it is the foundation of Peacemaker's story, James Gunn thought everything through, and unlike Marvel, he made things a lot easier to follow. Projects in the newly formed DCU are connected, sure, but not in a way that would confuse new viewers. You can jump into any movie or show without feeling lost, and still get the full experience. This is exactly what turned many viewers away from watching MCU films. Gunn learned a valuable lesson from Marvel Studios, and will not make the same mistakes as they once did. So what can we actually expect from DC in the future? James Gunn already made it clear that he is building something completely new, something that superhero fans have not really seen before. At the same time, he wants to make sure that every viewer can still understand what is happening on screen without feeling lost, and judging by everything we've seen so far, it's actually working. The future of DC looks much brighter than ever. With his writing talent, his love for comics, and the way he listens to fans, Gunn is capable of creating a universe that can actually be interesting to follow. We already have a lineup of movies and shows that we will see in the next few years. No exact release dates yet, but what matters is that these projects are being made with love by people who actually care about the DC universe. We're talking about titles like Supergirl, Lanterns, The Swamp Thing, and of course the long-awaited new Batman movie, whose casting people are already speculating about. And maybe, just maybe this time, we're finally getting the superhero universe we always wanted.